Good morning, good morning. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. It is November 11th. No, sorry. It is November 3rd, 2024. I'm Eric Murphy. This is Skeptic Generation, and we need to talk. Hey, thank you so much for joining. Hope you all had a safe and fun Halloween. For people who are watching live, make sure that you set your clocks forward, because for those of us who do daylight savings time, that was last night, which definitely explains why people are a little slow to come in today. So we're going to take our time. We're going to relax and just kind of enjoy ourselves. I'm definitely going to need callers because I think a lot of people have slept in from the time change. And my cat is absolutely going bonkers today. So just be ready for that. But before I give any more information, before I talk about what the subject is, I want to get the phone number out because I would love to get callers in the line. Secular Rarity is call screening. Thank you, SR. I appreciate it. And he's waiting for your call. So if you want to talk to me, today is the day. I would love for that to happen. Call 412-SKEPGEN. That's 412-753-7436. Again, 412-753-7436. Or, oh, my audio is a little bit low, so let me make sure that I'm coming in nice and loud here. 1 second, please. All right. Hopefully this will help a little bit. Okay. There we go. 412-753-7436, or you can go to tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. That's tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. Our call screener's waiting for your call, and I would, again, love to talk to you. My cat is absolutely dying for attention. Okay, so today's a frustrating topic, and I think we should talk about it because I don't think people really have a firm understanding of what presupposition is, presuppositionalism, and what it means to presuppose. Saying that word a lot, but let's dive into it. Do we presuppose anything when we go into arguments? Yes, we do. And when it comes to our day-to-day life, we presuppose a lot. In fact, I would say that the entire field of heuristics is just that, presupposition, right? We create these kind of shortcuts in our mind to get from A to B, and they're reliable, right? We see an item, or we see an object that's small on the horizon, and we think, okay, that is small because it is from a certain distance, and we can kind of estimate how far away it is, right? I think that optical illusions rely on those heuristics to fool us, but again, presupposition. I think that even when we're talking about logical arguments, we are making a presupposition. We presuppose that the laws of logic are consistent. Identity, non-contradiction, and the excluded middle are things that are just carved in stone and are never to be a problem. Sorry, just checking things. So if we have those if we have those presuppositions, then what presuppositions do we allow for others? And when is it okay to draw the line there? Well, I think that we can go back to the history of presuppositional apologetics, right? I guess I should give the basic idea of it. The idea is that that logic itself presupposes a God, and any evidence of logic being consistent or real at all is evidence of that God. And so someone who's arguing for the existence of a God would say that using logic at all means that they already won the argument. And I think that's some bullshit, obviously, because, well, sorry, let me go back a little bit. So gave you the general conceit of it. If you want to look it up online, you can look up the transcendental argument for the existence of God. You can go back to people like Bonson, who was a theologian who really kind of pushed the rhetoric around the transcendental argument for the existence of God. If you want to go further back, I believe it was Clark and Van Til, who went separate ways on it, but definitely kind of pioneered it. So this kind of school of thought really goes back about 140 years, something like that. And yeah, you'll see major Christian apologists use this argument. So what should we allow for each other? I want to make the argument that we should allow for the laws of logic. Absolutely. Let me see here. Okay. I think we should absolutely make the assumption that the laws of logic are consistent. I don't think that we can make an argument without it. I don't think that we can make a coherent statement without understanding that a thing means what it is, what it means, what it means, doesn't what it doesn't, and can't mean what it does and what it doesn't at the same time. So let's grant that. I think that anytime we're dealing with an honest interlocutor, somebody who is really wanting to engage with you, they're going to grant that to you, and you're going to grant that to them. And that's a presupposition that you both have kind of agreed on in the terms of this conversation. But when it comes to arguing your point through the transcendental argument, I think that you toss the baby with the bathwater. I think that it's not good for apologists to use this argument simply because they never actually get into a topic. It becomes a rhetoric game. It becomes all the oxen free, I touched the tree first, I'm safe kind of thing. And it never actually gets into honestly listening to each other or engaging on a discrete topic. Instead, it never allows things to start in the first place. So that's my frustration. Now, for the part where you come in, I want to challenge your presuppositions. I think that when it comes to heuristics, people use them all of the time. I use heuristics when it comes to choosing friends. I use heuristics when it comes to driving. Oh my gosh, there's so much information that happens while you're driving that you're taking a lot of kind of mental shortcuts in order to be able to make sense of that information and drive safely. I use heuristics when I open the fridge and I decide, whether or not that food is still good to eat. And so if I use heuristics on the day-to-day, does that mean that I'm living a presuppositional life that could be consistent with a presuppositionalist argument? Or are they fundamentally different? That's what I would really, really love to challenge you guys on. Because I don't think that I should remove the heuristics that I have in place. Everything that I've put into the structure of the way I live my life. Yeah, there are places that I could do better, but also there are useful shortcuts that I make. And so are heuristics only good when it comes to not making truth claims? Is that enough? Is that sufficient? Because I don't feel like I use heuristics that way either. I have a bunch of, mental shortcuts that I do when it comes to math, and they've been consistent, all the way across, but it's not perfect. And so how useful are they? How much can I rely on them, and how much can I use them to influence other people? Anyway, that's what I thought should be the call for today. But again, if you want to talk about what you believe and why, if you want to talk about atheism, dealing with religious family members, if you are a religious person, if you've interacted with a ghost, or any kind of spiritual, supernatural type of thing, call in. The show's always open to that. On top of that, let me Oh, I lost it. No worries. That's okay. I do have one call on the line, so I am going to take it. And I'm very, very happy, Chris, for calling in. Thank you. Before I take you, though, phone number is going across the screen right now. I'd love to get more people on the line. In the meantime, though, let's talk to Chris in Scotland. Chris, you are live.
Hello there.
Hello. How's it going?
I'm doing okay. I busted my elbow a couple of weeks back, and I've been on painkillers. But other than that, I've been doing all right.
Well, I'm glad you're not in pain, or hopefully, at least.
Not too much.
Well, you have definitely saved my butt today. I appreciate you. What did you want to talk about?
So, as you know, I've been on quite a few of the shows talking about different things. I was watching one of the older videos with UNV about, how to engage with religious people. I believe the sort of snippet is called "Did We Mock You?" or something. And I was talking about how I came to be an atheist from believing in everything from Atlantis to UFOs and everything in between. And so one thing that I think V had said was along the lines of tolerating people without tolerating their beliefs. Mm-hmm. And I struggle with that a little bit because to some extent you are your beliefs, and I will always try and treat a person with respect, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I will treat a person's beliefs or opinions with respect. And I understand that the consensus is, oh no, you should treat people's opinions with respect, but there are some pretty extreme belief systems and opinions out there.
Yeah.
And to some extent, you are your opinions, you are your beliefs, and if your beliefs are to some extent horrific, then I feel like that has some impact on who you are as a person. And I'm struggling a little bit with how do I tolerate a person without tolerating their bad beliefs? Yeah. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on it.
So I think that we need to probably piece apart your concept of identity first, because if someone is their beliefs, then that makes sense that it would be very difficult to tolerate and not tolerate the person and the person, right? Like if those are synonymous, then we got a really big problem.
True.
So my definition for that is your identity is, again, this is just what I've used, is you are the collection of stories you tell yourself about yourself.
I like that.
Yeah, that is your identity. And your identity changes, but it is always the collection of stories you tell yourself about yourself. Mm-hmm. And I've used the same examples for years, but they're really good examples. I use an example of someone who is, very active in civil rights and protesting and going out and looking out for the little guy, and in this kind of thought experiment, this person goes, oh, I've always been this way. It's a core part of me. When I was little, when I was in first grade, I remember I raised my hand and asked the teacher, can I go to the restroom? And the teacher said no. And so I stood up and I looked her in the eyes and I peed my pants. Just full eye contact, pissed my pants, because I don't put up with bullshit, and like that is a key moment in their life that they hold on to. But years later, they run into their teacher and they get to talking about it. And it turns out it was an entirely different student that happened to.
Oh.
It didn't happen to them. But did it matter? What matters is that they built their identity, at least in part, on that story that they told about themselves.
Uh-huh. And
so whether or not it was true doesn't actually impact their identity because it's just the story they tell themselves. Another example, a sad one, is living with a narcissist. Living with someone who gaslights you. If somebody tells you that you're stupid and forgetful, it doesn't matter if you really are. After a while, you believe them.
Yep, true story.
Yeah,
yep.
And it becomes part of that identity. I'm a forgetful person. I'm not very smart. Mm. I think that over time we build those stories up about ourselves and create this fully fledged person that we are. But our beliefs, I think, are different in a really important way, because our beliefs change. Our beliefs are just the end result of our epistemology, right? It's the end result of us using the tools that we have to get to where we're going. And as our tools change, then we get to different or, more precise conclusions, hopefully. And so I don't respect shitty beliefs. And I don't think beliefs are inherently deserving of respect, because I think that, again, no one, to me, is their beliefs. As long as they have an idea of who they are contextually, if they're able to provide that context for themselves and others through, the stories they tell themselves, then I think their identity is still intact.
I see. So, could I give you an example of the kind of thing that I'm talking about? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
So let's say your God is against homosexuality and says it's an abomination. And, your God is a genocidal maniac, let's say. And you say, well, I love my God and I worship my God. And if God says that, homosexuality is an abomination and that, black people is because of some curse or other, then I will believe that and I will treat homosexual black people or whatever accordingly. And that's an example of your belief sort of impacting who you are as a person and how you act in the world. That's the kind of thing that I mean.
What's funny is I find that people who are not racist tend not to justify racism based on something like that. Mm-hmm. I think that the uncomfortable thing is most of us don't most of us don't act logically. We don't think things through ahead of time and then act on those thoughts. Most of the time we're just reflexively doing whatever we're doing. And then if somebody says, hey, why did you do that? Most of the time
make it up afterwards.
Yeah, you don't just make it up, but you think about it and you go, okay, what are some supporting reasons that I can use to justify the thing that I just did?
Wow.
At least that's what I find to be the case most of the time. Like, I don't sit and think about the long-term ethical implications of going to the grocery store, every single time I need food. I don't think about the rainforest every time I use toilet paper.
Sure.
And people just can't do that. That kind of gets into the topic of today. Heuristics is, we have these shortcuts to kind of get us to where we're going. But yeah, I don't think that, I don't think it's like that. And I think that a lot of atheists have a lot of frustration about that and lie to themselves, because we like to think of ourselves as logical. We like to think of ourselves as, purely doing things because, that's where the evidence has taken us. But in practice, most of us don't do that.
I think you're right. I think that as human beings, we're some mix of, certainly logic is part of it, but in large part we're still ruled by the more, unevolved animalistic parts of ourselves, the emotional parts of ourselves, and the logic kind of comes in a bit later in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that logic should be important when it comes to reflection, when it comes to metacognition, if we're thinking about thinking, if we're developing new heuristics, we should have that in mind. And I keep using that word, but it's just, did the milk go bad? Give it a smell. If it doesn't smell good, you should probably not drink it. Right?
Absolutely. I get what you mean.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. My cat is coughing. I apologize. But it's something as easy as that you learned that because you learned that milk goes bad. And when milk goes sour, it can make you feel sick.
That's true.
Everything about it, it no longer tastes good. What is a sign of that? The smell going off. And so you now have this shortcut. Smell it. If it doesn't smell right, throw it away. That's a heuristic.
I see.
And so, I think that you do develop those, and I think that logic should come into play there, right? If we're making those kind of big overall rules about our lives, then we can go, okay, what does the evidence say? Well, we know about the germ theory of disease. We know, that every time we've seen milk go bad and somebody drink it, most of the time people get really ill.
Yeah.
And we can base it off of that. And so I'm not saying logic doesn't have a role to play. I'm just saying that it has a very specific role that it plays, and it's not necessarily the one we all like to pretend it does.
No, I mean, you make a good point.
Yeah.
So do you think, for example, if someone... What I find quite often with religion, at least, is that people will... Let's say you're a Christian, but you're a decent person. What I find very often is that they will ignore the parts of that book that are, let's say, condone slavery or say homosexuality is an abomination or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they'll kind of, in many ways, just ignore the bits that don't suit them.
Right.
And I wonder, I feel like there's a couple of groups where you've got the extremists who are ironically the ones that are taking it to heart and doing everything the book tells them to do. You've got the people who, they believe it and they want to become knowledgeable about it, but not to the point where they're not mixing fabrics, let's say. And then you've got this group who don't necessarily even know all that much about, they'll go to mass or whatever, and they won't necessarily know a great deal about the theology and the history of how these books were, pulled together. And they kind of just want something to keep them warm at night, something to... I don't know, they want it's a comfort blanket. So I think there are maybe a couple of different groups. We talk about religion very often as a monolith, but I think there are these different groups within it.
Oh, absolutely. Even as a Christian, it felt that way. When I was a believer, I definitely found that there were social, quote unquote, social Christians, people who came in who didn't really live their life biblically as I saw it. But they got their sense of community at the church. And so they were there every Sunday. And, there was a smug sense of superiority over them. But that's because I've always been an asshole. I do my best to not be that person, but I
don't think you're an asshole at all, Eric.
Oh well, I appreciate that, but that kind of smugness is something that it's. I think you're right. In the same way that we're talking about, are we really using logic, in all of our decisions? No. I don't think that Christians are all coming at things from the exact same direction. You're absolutely right. There are people who go to church because they get their friendships, their community, their family identity as part of it. But what are some other stories that they tell themselves about themselves? How can they wrap that into their identity? Because it's not just saying, oh, I believe, because I believe might be different for each of those examples you just gave, right?
Yeah.
So instead of saying in a monolithic way, oh, this person believes that and I should respect their beliefs, what does I believe mean to each of those people? I think that I have a couple of examples. I don't have all of them, but I would say that, let's see, there are people who get a sense of I am the best version of myself. I fit in. I'm doing all the right things. I'm checking all the boxes. I'm a good Christian, and there's a sense of identity and, getting all the rules and then doing all the things the right way. There's a sense of satisfaction when it comes to that. And I think that a similar kind of satisfaction comes from people who have very, very strict dietary needs or put very strict dietary restrictions on themselves. I've got this set of rules. I've got a reason why I think that I should do it. I'm going to follow it. When I follow all those things, it feels good. Your body dumps some dopamine. It feels nice to go, hey, I did all the things right.
Absolutely.
There are others who don't care as much about that personally, but they do all of those things simply because they want to be viewed by their community as being as perfect a person as you can be. There's this kind of performative aspect. And so instead of it being internal, it's external. I want other people to see me as perfect. And I think that in my church, in most churches, I would say all churches that are big enough, you have those families that are closest to the pastor. The ones that are high up in the church, the elders, the families who are just a little too perfect, who are there for every last thing. And I think that their benefit is more social. If somebody says, I believe in God, I think that there are a couple of questions that you can ask that can really help. Like, what does that mean to you? Does it matter if other people know? What does that mean for you and your church?
That's an interesting question to ask, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it gets people off guard because they're expecting the angry, keyboard warrior atheist. They're expecting, somebody to destroy them with facts and logic. By the way, for everybody watching, I just recently finished a video with Genetically Modified Skeptic.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. He had me on to look at Christian content creators who were, lifting each other's content and doing react videos, just kind of really low effort stuff. And in the end, spoilers, it really started with us.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Do you know what a hitch slap is?
I do. I love Christopher Hitchens. His debate. Actually, speaking of that, I went to see Richard Dawkins live very recently.
Oh yeah, I met him a few times. I do not like the strange path that he has gone down.
No, nor do I. This whole sort of this sort of cultural Christian stuff. It has gone a little bit.
Yeah. Dawkins, I don't know. He surprised me. He's a little guy, isn't he?
I think he is. Yeah, he seems like a nice enough fella, and he seems very intelligent. But he's going down this kind of, I don't know, down this sort of Jordan Peterson sort of route where he's like against the woke stuff, and I can't help but wonder what is it he's talking about with the woke stuff. I don't get it.
He's fallen down the J.K. Rowling anti-trans rabbit hole.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and I think it's unfortunate because you have somebody who is brilliant as a biologist, and his ability to communicate as a biologist and talk about, his field of study was really beneficial in me being able to break apart like the watchmaker argument. But I think that when people go to you for things that are outside of your field of study, you start to think that you know more than you do. And I think that you got to defer to people who actually know that shit. And I don't think he did that. And I also don't think that he got very many empathetic people. At least my assumption is that he got just absolutely, and he just doubled down. But I know other people who have had that kind of thing happen, who didn't double down, who are sweet people. And so I don't think he has an excuse. I think that he has chosen to be really shitty to a lot of people. And so I'm not impressed by him at all. That said, how did we get to this topic? I'm sorry.
I don't know. I think we were talking about hitch slaps.
Yes, that's right. Hitch slap. So that's cringy. It was entertaining, and it was really entertaining for me when I got into it. But at the same time, it's, Christian destroyed by, this crazy one-liner. And it's just, I think that it perpetuates an us versus them mentality. and it
I think you're right.
paints the other side in a way that does not encourage communication and useful discourse. And I think that Christians are doing it now. You know, and I think I don't think that you can honestly like look at that and point that out without pointing out that stuff in yourself.
No, I must admit, when I got into the atheist movement, I really loved things like, Christopher Hitchens, and actually you in your younger days, some of those calls were just spectacular.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. My long-term goal for this show is, and it always has been, now that I'm living in a completely different state, my search continues, but I want to get a producer, because right now you watch me doing the show and my eyes are shifting to the left and to the right. And that's because I'm watching multiple screens that have the calls on them, that have the stream up, that has the YouTube live stream and Twitch. I'm streaming out on Twitch. And so I'm checking the feeds and then doing all the technical work. And so I'm not able to focus on things the way I used to because I had a producer. So the time will come. I will get there. But I'm doing my best in the meantime,
Absolutely, and I must admit, I'm not quite as tolerant of certain groups as I should be, especially religiously, I mean, because I just think, you're part of this organization that has just caused all this unspeakable harm throughout the generations, but it's something I'm looking to do a bit differently and maybe improve my epistemology, and I don't know, just try to come at it from a slightly more civil approach, because while, I'm massively into activism, I do charity work, and I see the atheism as part of that, and trying to kind of, stop anything in the world that I see as bad, but I feel to an extent that the way in which I deal with it is discordant with who I am as a person, because I'm arguing against religion, but I want to talk people around.
Yeah. I think that just practice and know that you're not going to be perfect right at the start. That the more that you have these conversations, the more you're going to find your voice. And don't try to be me. Don't try to be, whatever other YouTuber that you've seen. You're going to find your voice. And it just comes with practice. I promise.
Yeah. My issue isn't trying to be mean. My issue is trying not to be mean. And that's, I see it as such a corrosive effect on society. And I'm trying very hard to approach it in a nice way, but I'm not getting there as much as I want.
Well, there are times for justified anger. And I think it's more cathartic allowing yourself to be angry when you know that you have every right to be.
Yeah.
So just think of you're putting a quarter in the jar. And that way, when a real asshole comes along, you can buy yourself something nice.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it was good chatting to you. And are you and me doing well? Are you all right?
I am. I moved to doing content creation full time at the beginning of this year. And this show is taking a bit to get back going, but part of that has been just me getting back on a schedule, getting the podcast out regularly, getting the clips out every day. And so I'm excited to see it grow, and I actually have a really huge announcement at the end of the year for the start of next year that I think is going to help things. And so in time, I'm hoping this show is going to grow enough that I can personally get a producer and be able to, live off of doing content creation and helping other YouTubers make their, videos in their channels. And not everything is about money, though. And I'm happy. No. I'm comfortable. I gained a little too much weight, but I've got a cat that loves me, and I've got a partner upstairs who's asleep that I love to death and who loves me. So I really can't complain.
That's amazing, pal. It was great to chat to you again. I hope you have a great night.
Hey,
bye,
you too.
pal.
Take care of yourself.
Bye.
That was a wonderful start to the calls, and I have several calls that I am really excited about. So how about we talk to a believer? It's been a while. John in Canada. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hey,
Hi.
doing okay. So it seems like you are on the believing side of things this time. What's going on?
Well, I just found something. Have you ever noticed the intelligent design around the world
No.
that you see around you?
No, I
You
haven't.
haven't.
Mm-mm.
Then how do you explain the beauty of this world that we live in?
We live in a beautiful world.
Okay, but how do you explain that?
What do you mean by explain?
Well, how do you think it came to be?
Well, I don't know how a lot of things came to be. Do you know how life began on this planet?
Well, according to the scientific explanation, actually, what is that? I think it was like there were several self-replicating cells that came together, and then made a glue, and then all of a sudden it came life forms, and then it came an ape-like creature, then us. Is that it?
That is a proposed theory. When it comes to the beginning of life, we have a word for it. It's called abiogenesis, right? The beginning of life from non-life. And that is a massive question that I don't think has been fully answered. And so it's uncomfortable to say I don't know, but I think I have to if I'm going to be honest, right? Like I have a cell phone and I know that it works.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
if I say, how do you explain it? John, could you tell me how the cell phone works? Really?
Well, it was built by a manufacturer.
But I don't care. So the fact that it was manufactured means that it works?
Well, no.
No, I'm talking about how it happens, right? Like how your call connects to a signal, right? How that goes through different signal carriers. It'd be Verizon or AT&T or Sprint or whatever. How it gets routed through different systems, how it gets sent over wire or whatever to get to the other side and then back to you so quickly that we can hardly even tell that there's a difference, right? You and I, you're in Canada. I'm in the United States. We're communicating so effectively that we're able to have this back and forth conversation. I could not tell you the details, the minutia of that. Could you?
How that works?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not Alexander Graham Bell.
Well, I think even Alexander Graham Bell would not understand voice over IP and, web hosting stuff. So let's quit pretending that you need to know the answers to everything. Understand that there are things that you don't know and then go from there. So do you think that it sounds like you're saying that the world has telltale markers of design, right?
Well, sometimes I feel that way.
Sometimes you feel that way.
Yes.
Well, I know that you've called before as a questioning person, as a non-believer, and as a believer. So you're definitely in that place where you're exploring these ideas.
Yeah.
What have you explored here before calling me? Like, what have you thought about so far when it comes to intelligent design? That way, we're not starting at square one. Like, what do you got so far?
Okay. Well, sometimes I notice how the logic of things. For instance, relationships. I find it amazing how two people can find each other and start a Congress. I also find it amazing how the laws of logic. I'm also fascinated by how society works. Think about it.
Hold on. You said a bunch of things. So are all of those in the same argument, or are those like, which one are we going to focus on here?
Okay. What I'm saying is this. We live in this big planet called Earth.
Right.
And we're surrounded by trees, natural stuff, and we're here.
Yep.
Somehow, one way or the other, we found a way to organize ourselves to form a society that works. And as you said earlier, you went to the point where you and I can have this conversation over our web between two different countries. How do you think that happened?
I think that we created it. Right? Human hands solved that. We invented it.
You don't think there was no guiding principle, no guiding voice? Because like you asked me earlier, do I know how a cell phone works. Not only do I don't know how a cell phone works. Therefore, there's no way I could possibly make one. I'm pretty sure you can't either.
Right. I think that I could learn, though. I think that there are sound fundamental physical principles that they're built on. And I think that we've studied them and understood them such that we can engineer this.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so so let's talk about the natural world.
Yeah.
Are there trees that are engineered? Well, humans can genetically splice trees, and we have GMOs. So is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about like just the fact that it is growing, that the trees have leaves? Like what specifically about trees or mountains or sunsets? Like what is it about it that intrigues you and makes you think that it was created?
It's the sheer beauty. It's the sheer beauty of it.
Yeah, but I've been to really awesome concerts and had wonderful feelings as well. And I've looked out at the night sky and felt awe and wonder, and I never needed to think that it was created.
You don't never once crossed your mind?
Oh, it absolutely did. I was a believer.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. No, I absolutely believed that. And then I found out that I didn't really have any reason to. The stars at night are not less beautiful because a God didn't create them. I think they're more fantastic. I think this world that we live in is so unlikely, so improbable that us being able to live right now is a real miracle that doesn't need a God. It's incredible, and I am so happy that I get to be here right now when I am, how I am. That no God need apply. There's
but
no.
Do you feel the need to keep that going? Like, what happens when the day comes when you close your eyes for the last time?
Then I'll die.
If and that doesn't scare you or bother you in any way?
Of course it does. Of course it does. But do you think that if I get cancer tomorrow, do you think that me being afraid of it is going to make it more or less dangerous?
Well, there are people who claim that if they have cancer, God got them through it.
Well, we can go into miracle claims, but I feel like that's an entire other conversation that I don't think that we'd be able to have this like intelligent design conversation and miracles conversation. We kind of got to pick one here.
Yeah, you have a point.
So since we already started with the intelligent design conversation, let's save the miracles conversation for another call, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So staying on intelligent design, I think that we live in an amazing, awe-inspiring universe, and there's no part of that that requires a God.
Okay.
So your reasoning so far has been, I feel awe and wonder, therefore God. And I'm saying I feel awe and wonder and not. So now what?
Oh, I guess I don't know what more I could say.
Well, I think that the awe and wonder, therefore God, is not a really good reason.
I see.
I think that awe and wonder are awesome. I'm amazed at the complexity of the world that I'm in. Of course I am. I'm not being like, pig-headed about it. I'm amazed. It's fall right now, John. I'm living in a state for the first time in my life that has all 4 seasons. I've never done that before. I've always lived in the southern part of the United States, and so because of that, I see the leaves changing on the trees. The wind.
I've lived in Canada. My whole life. We have all 4 seasons up here.
Well, okay, so you're spoiled. Here's what I'm telling you, John, is I am amazed at the beauty of it. I'm in awe when I smell on the breeze what everyone else recognizes as fall, and I go, this is fall. It's incredible. I can have those feelings and not believe in a God.
I'm amazed about the summer, or all the seasons, especially the summer.
Yeah, I think I had too much summer, but to each their own. What I'm saying though is that wonder is not a good reason.
You want? I'm about to tell you something. Something deep. Sometimes I have my doubts, but I have a lingering fear of the unknown,
Well,
especially afterwards.
Yeah, I think we all do. You're not alone in that.
I'm not alone?
No, I'm afraid of dying. Most people are.
But religion gives me a security.
If you believe it's true. Yeah. But do you think that if I said that I was Christian, do you think that it would help my existential crisis? Do you think I would feel that security?
If you're a Christian, I don't know you.
If I don't believe it, then there's no amount of me just saying it that's going to cause me to feel comfort there.
That's true.
I think that there's a fallacy called an appeal to consequences. And that's what you're doing here. And the appeal to consequences is when you point out the bad consequences of a thing in order to say that it is not true. So the common one is saying, oh, the Holocaust was really bad, therefore it never happened.
Who would say that? Who on the right mind would say that?
That's a good way to think about this, though, right? Like, it was really bad, but does that mean that it never happened?
Of course it happens. The people who say who don't know what they're talking about.
I agree. So if you die and you're afraid of death, does that fear make something else more true?
Well, no.
Dying and that being the end of things, that's really scary. Therefore, I should believe in God, or I do believe in God, or therefore I believe in an afterlife. That doesn't make any of those things more likely.
That's true.
It's just appealing to consequences. You know, and there's a whole realm of Christian thought that kind of moves down that appeal to consequences. Another one is if there's no God, then all morality is relative.
You and I had that conversation already.
Yeah, that's another appeal to consequences, right? Just because it sounds bad does not mean that it is more or less true.
I see.
So that's just another one of them. John, I would love to have these with you. I just don't want to be the first line of defense. I want you to put thought into them. That way, when you come to me, we can have a conversation about what you've worked on too, because I can't be the person doing this work for you. I need you to build up your toolbox so that you can work through those things, you know, because this show's not going to last forever. And I think that I will have succeeded in my job here on YouTube doing these shows if you can get there, if you can build up those tools, you know, those epistemic tools to be able to break down the world around you without me.
Okay, but here's one thing I want to say before I leave. I definitely believe in goodness, and I honestly believe that all goodness can be found in Christianity, but we're not going to get that conversation right now. So I'll talk to you later. Have a good day.
Take care of yourself. Yeah, and for the record, goodness is something that, number one, it's something that we attribute. We can say a thing is good. And to limit it only to Christianity and Christians cuts out so many people that I think it is a cruel thing to do. Again, that doesn't make it right or wrong. But I think there's a really, really tough argument that you have to make to get me to believe that. Anyway, let's move on and talk to Max in Illinois. Max, you're live on the show.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm good.
Good. So what did you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so the reason I'm calling today is to give my case for why religion is good as a moral system.
Okay.
Specifically, I think Christianity, maybe we could talk about Islam, but I think it has its defects.
Yeah, Max, I'm not as, like, I did not grow up in the religion of Islam, and so I don't have as much personal experience.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay, so if you and I both have experience with Christianity, then I think we could probably have a more nuanced conversation there.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
So my case goes like this. Basically, I think that even if God didn't exist, it would be good for people to invent it because it kind of keeps people in line in terms of some fundamental, I guess, beliefs that are good for society. And specifically, I think, not killing people, I think it's a big one. And I think also, it kind of sounds crazy, but, having a lot of kids, like reproducing and stuff. And about the second one, I would start just saying, like, right now in the West, we have a big crisis because people just not having enough kids. And partly it's because we're not so religious anymore that it's not, like, such an important thing for us. And as a result, we have to let in a lot of immigrants from countries that do have kids, that are more religious and that do have kids. So it's kind of self-defeating in a way that, like, it's, as Andrew Wilson put it, like a dead end, because eventually we're just going to die out.
There's a whole lot there. So the first thing that I want to point out, the biggest red flag, is there's a really weird pipeline that it sounds like you're getting into, that I want to point out to you. And that is that the needing to have kids, letting immigrants in so that they can have kids, is a major part of the white supremacist pipeline. And it takes people...
Yeah, I understand.
And that is filled with a lot of disinformation, a lot of bigotry, and a really, really rough, awful road to go down. And so I want to point that out, put that flag on the play, that as you're going through this, don't get sucked into it, okay?
Yeah. And, of course, you're right about that. And I recognize that a lot of people use it as a, sort of like a supremacist thing.
Oh, absolutely. That is a fundamental piece of something called the Great Replacement Theory.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. And yeah, you're right. It's dangerous. But I was talking from the point of, like, sharing similar values as the population. I'm an immigrant myself, and a lot of people who come, they don't really have the same respect, I guess, for the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment. I saw a video of some people in, I believe it was Dearborn or something, where they were protesting, having LGBTQ flags and, on people's houses and stuff.
Yeah, that's also happening in Florida, in Texas, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Illinois. All right, like, not Illinois. Like, it's happening not just with immigrant groups, but fundamentalist Christian groups all over the United States.
Yeah, you're right.
I think
I just feel that.
Yeah, I think it's a fundamentalism issue.
Yeah.
More than it is an immigrant issue. Because here's the thing: when you immigrated, did you personally immigrate to the U.S.?
Yeah, I came here 10 years ago.
Okay. Did you get brought in because you're a breeder?
No, because
how many breeder visas do you think people get every year?
I think none, but I don't think it's because it's not because they have more kids that we bring them in. It's because they have skills and education that will be useful to our economy.
Well, and also because we have empathy and we want to, if somebody comes as a refugee, if somebody comes because of love, because they got married, or something like that, like there are lots of great reasons. And I think that the having babies piece of it is a weird thing to point out, because
I was just pointing out that like a core American population not having enough means we have to let in more immigrants who then, don't respect our values.
What are you talking about?
Like people coming here from Islamic countries saying, in the Quran, you cannot be gay. And as a result, they're doing sorts of, tearing down flags, instituting, voting for laws that would criminalize this sort of thing, or maybe not criminalize, but voting for their local laws, like municipal laws that could make it illegal to hoist an LGBTQ flag.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the same values because of their backgrounds, such as
But Max, bigotry is an American value.
Yeah, but I feel like to a lesser extent,
it's not.
People. Yeah.
No, it's okay. I think we're talking over each other because we're getting excited. But I do want to clarify this: that the founding fathers, right, the people who wrote the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, were themselves often slave owners. They owned other humans.
Yeah.
I think that baked in to a lot of the founding principles of the United States is bigotry, is treating other groups of people as less than. I think that it is fundamentally a something that is very, very hard to extract from the system that we're in. And it has taken us, 300 years?
Yeah, about that.
250 some years or whatever, right? Almost 300 years to get to where we are now. We're still very, very far from it. And so to say that is against American principles or our principles, I think doesn't take into account the Mormon Church, which is very American. It was an American religion, started in America, and is based right in Utah, right? It definitely doesn't take into account the Second Great Awakening, which was a fundamentalist, Protestant movement that happened over 100 years ago. That absolutely, you have so many different religious sects that splintered off, and so many of them are absolutely bigoted. When you point out Islam, Muslim people coming and bringing their bigotry, it seems like their bigotry matches a lot of the bigotry that they're going to find right here in the United States anyway.
Yeah, I mean, as it comes to fundamentalism, I think it's a really bad thing for our society.
I mean,
whether it's Islamists going by the Quran and their hadiths and the sunnahs, or whether it's Protestants who just decide that, my pastor said this, therefore it must be true. That's how it is. Well,
and part of that whole founding mythology, the pilgrims that came to the United States, what were they? They were religious fundamentalists who were too extreme to be in the UK, and they came to the United States so that they can set up their religious, living situation the way they wanted to, outside of the reach of the crown.
Yeah, and it's also not good. But in modern times, I just feel like these fundamentalism things, they're bad for our society, for our government, and something more moderating, I think Catholicism, maybe Anglicanism, something that's sort of has an institution.
I think it had enough time to have the edges maybe worn down a bit, but the Catholic Church is responsible for the Crusades. So I don't necessarily think that is a moderating force. I think that it has just been around for a long time. But either way, I feel like we're getting away from the topic that you brought up. The topic that you brought up is that immigrants are coming in and bringing values that are not American. But it sounds like the values that you're talking about are absolutely found here in America. So what is it about
some of them?
Like what?
Some of them are bringing values like intolerance to other religions. Some of them bring intolerance to other sexual orientations, gender identities.
Like the Mormons?
Yeah, like the Mormons and the Muslims, and all sorts of different. Not different. Yeah, basically anyone who's not a Catholic really is kind of a bit extreme. Maybe reforms.
There are a lot of really extreme Catholics, so let's not cut them out here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my point is that just Christian religion, Catholic specifically, has a benefit in terms of being a moral system, and my reasons for that is, some fundamental things like thou shalt not kill,
Okay.
thou shalt not steal, stuff like that. I don't know what the canon is.
No worries. So let's go down that. First of all, though, I want to give you a resource. Look up Bill Donahue in the Catholic League. I want you to watch.
I'm not quiet. Yeah.
I want you to watch some videos with Bill Donahue, and as a representative of the Catholic League, and tell me what a moderate kind of force that is, because I think that you're going to find you don't have as much in common with Bill as you think you do, and he is a representative Catholic, so I think that your view of Catholicism is optimistic.
Yeah.
That said,
it is.
let's talk about morality. Okay, so you brought up the Ten Commandments, right? Do you know what the Ten Commandments are?
I know, just you shall not kill, you shall not be like with your neighbor's wife or something like that.
No, I've got them. So we're going to start. We're going to count all 10, okay? And we're going to see how many of them have any kind of moral justification, whatever. Because you're saying that Christianity, you're making a moral case for Christianity, right? That
like a utilitarian case.
Yeah, the world would benefit from Christian moral principles, and your example of it is the Ten Commandments, correct?
Yeah.
Cool.
Good start.
Commandment number 1, thou shalt not have no other gods before me.
Okay, I think it's maybe like morally neutral. It's good if everyone follows the same religion in terms of having the same moral system.
Thou shalt have no other gods before me is not a moral statement. It is a jealous statement. It is an insecure statement. But it definitely doesn't have anything to do with morals.
Yeah, but it's in my view, it like sets it up that just believe in one God, in the same one, so you all have the same, so you all follow the same Ten Commandments, basically.
So that sounds very Muslim, honestly. The Muslim faith calls itself the religion of peace, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Why do they call themselves the religion of peace?
I don't know.
Because once everyone is Muslim, there will be no more wars.
That's a good point. I think it makes sense.
I think that is the most fascistic one. Like, that is the justification for holy war.
Yeah, I can see how that could be it.
Because if you destroy the other countries, but I think that the reasoning you just gave, if everyone is the same religion, then we'll all be under the same banner and it'll be more okay, is a fundamental piece of a jihad, of a holy war, of a crusade. Deus vult, God wills it. It's the whole founding principle of religious conquest is to get everyone under your banner so that now we can all behave. Number one, I don't think that it really counts in the first commandment, but even if it did, that's really terrible. I think that's worse than nothing. But let's move on. So thou shalt have no other gods before me. I don't think has anything to do with morality. Number 2, thou shalt make no graven images.
Graven images?
Yep.
What does that mean?
So a graven image, you know how Muslims don't like you to portray their God?
Yeah.
Muslims don't want Muhammad to be written or, drawn or, any kind of paintings done. Those are all graven images.
Okay.
Do Christians do that?
No, I think they have icons.
That's the same thing. And actually, honestly, most Christians that are not Catholics look at the way that Catholics treat the saints and view them all as graven images. So you can argue with Christians about that, but it's safe to say that no Christian sects follow that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
so
right,
so at best, it's not moral at all, and at worst, it is one that Christians particularly do all the time. Okay. Number 3, don't take the name of the Lord God in vain. Don't take God's name in vain. Where's the morality there?
In vain means like swearing, right? Or
No, it means the name of God. So
in vain.
yeah, so God damn you. Right?
So you cannot ever say God?
Well, you can't say God damn, you can't say holy fuck. You can't say
Yeah,
Jesus Christ when you stub your toe. But also, you know, if you look, because the Ten Commandments are in the Old Testament, that means that all of the Abrahamic faiths have these. The Jewish people do take it to that point. They don't say God. They have other words for God, like Hashem, which means the name, so that they don't have to say God's name.
Yeah, this is probably also morally neutral.
Yeah, has nothing. So we're 3 out of 10 so far, and I think we're batting 0. Okay, number 4, keep the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath, keep it holy. I mean, like if you're really pro-union, maybe you can argue, you know, but no, I think that remembering the Sabbath is not a very moral one. So now we're at 4 out of 10, still batting 0.
Okay.
5, honor thy father and mother.
I think it's a good one. You know, you should be respectful to your parents.
Do you think that is a rule that should be taught?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think everyone has fathers and mothers that they should respect?
I think even if, you know, like the prodigal son metaphor, it's like this. It's like maybe your family is not the best, but, you know, it's still the closest thing you have that will give you like unconditional support.
They don't, though.
Like your blood.
Max, I think that you're operating on an assumption that I think is beautiful. I think it's beautiful that you think that parents support their kids that way every time, but they don't. There are a lot of parents who are cruel, manipulative, and vile, and are terrible to their children. That there's a lot of child abuse that happens, and the idea that they would give you unconditional love and support, that's not true, because that's not what happens in the real world. If anything,
you're right, it doesn't always happen.
Yeah, if anything, I feel like if you want to phrase it that way, then it shouldn't be honor thy father and mother. It should be honor your children and love them unconditionally. I like that, but that's not one of the commandments.
Well, it's like there's the prodigal son thing in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I mean, you know, of course, the previous 4 you said, it doesn't really fit right now. But, you know, the spirit of it is, you know, really like community building and orienting towards like survival of the community.
The first 4 don't have anything to do with morality, though. And that's what we're trying to stay on topic with, is you're saying that a moral system like Christianity is good for the world so let's keep that, right? Do I need to give you personal examples? Like, should I give you examples of parents doing awful things?
No.
Because I could, and it would probably make you cry.
I understand that it's not always happening.
No.
But, you know, as a general rule, I feel like, you know, maybe someone is like living in sin, as they say, you know, having like addictions, for example. And they're, you know, parents trying to stop them, but they are not like honoring them by not listening to them.
I think that if that's the case, then you would probably write better commandments than God did so far, because you're operating under the assumption that those parents care. I think that if you wanted parents to care, then that would be a really great commandment. Honor your children. But that's not it. It's honor thy father and mother.
I still think it's a good commandment. Of course, it doesn't apply all the time, but sometimes it does. And also, people can change.
Yeah, but that all of a sudden means that it is not a hard and steady rule, so it should not be a commandment.
I see your points.
I mean, Max,
so it should be
Max.
Like, sometimes honor them.
I, as a young man, needed to move out when I turned 18 because I was getting the shit beat out of me by my dad. How much should I honor him?
You shouldn't beat him, maybe.
No, I didn't. But how much should I honor him?
I mean, I cannot speak to your particular situation.
I just told it to you.
What was he beating you up for? You know,
He's
Were
so unmedicated mental illness.
Yeah. I guess you should honor him then.
How about people whose parents whose dads are drug addicts?
Well, I think every drug addict is running from something, from some issue that they're in themselves are deeply uncomfortable with.
That's great reasoning. I'm just saying that how much should we be honoring them, or should we be looking at the particulars? Like you said, in certain instances, and plenty of instances, there are parents who do care.
I mean, I think in that case, I think they just need help, If someone is a drug addict, they need, support. And, as an aside, we don't have to go into it, but, Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, requires one to believe in a higher deity because it's more likely to work that way. If you are already a believer, you're more likely to stop.
So, Max, that is an argument that I would love to talk about, but I feel like we're going to get into a weird place there. The only point that I was making with the drug addicted parent, or the narcissistic parent, or whatever the case is, or parent that just doesn't care as much about their kids as maybe your parents cared about you, is honor thy father and mother is not a good commandment. It might be a great suggestion, and I love the different versions you came up with. I really love the idea that you should love your children unconditionally. But the fact is unconditional love is not something that is practiced, and it is not something that is, it's not practiced by Christians, and it's not done in general. So I don't think we should rely on that as a commandment. So we're 50% of the way in. We're 5 out of 10, and I still think we're batting 0. So number 6, thou shalt not kill.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing not to kill people. I think.
What if you're protecting your family?
I think then it becomes murder. No, it's murder if you kill for a bad reason, right? Not in self-defense, for example, or I would say in war, if you're attacking someone's country, you're a murderer. If you're defending, you're just a killer because you have to do something.
The commandment is thou shalt not kill.
Is it? I mean, it should be thou shalt not murder.
I like that. I like that version. And if we want to use that version, that sounds nice.
Well, is it specifically thou shalt not kill, or is it a translation that people have attributed?
So I believe that there's actually a Christian text that gets used. It's called Strong's Concordance, that can get used for that. I've heard the argument that it's thou shalt not murder, but I think contextually it's vague and it's very useful. So let's just be as charitable as I can be, and let's just say it's thou shalt not murder. Are there times when murder is okay?
No. Okay. I mean, I don't think death penalty is okay.
But I think that the death penalty is state-sanctioned murder. Okay, what about if there's a serial killer and you know where they're at, right? You have the chance to stop them. They're going to kill again. I think if you took them out, I personally would buy you a beer.
Right. And,
right.
Me too, but I feel in that case, you're more talking about killing because, you said if they're going somewhere to do it, or if they're at loose, right? They killed someone, they escaped police. Yeah, but they're still around there.
But you're not protecting you or your family. You're actively going out and seeking justice. You're killing, or you're murdering. I want to use the language that we agreed on here. You're murdering in order to do something better. I think that thou shalt not kill, you and I both agree is bad, and thou shalt not murder is contextual. It depends. Just like you talked about with the father and mother thing. I think that it depends. Circumstances change, but I don't think that's a hard and fast rule that you should have, in stone, on a stone tablet.
Well, I mean, I would still say that you should give this one to the Christianity because, even if someone is a murderer, a serial killer, they should be tried by the law, of the land, of the country. Okay. And this vigilante justice is wrong.
So have you ever heard eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth?
Yeah.
Do you know where that comes from?
The Old Testament.
It comes from Hammurabi, which predates the Old Testament.
Yeah.
So if you want to go for that, then I think the point should not go to Christianity. It should go to Hammurabi's law. But I don't think that anyone should have the overall point there, because I think that we as a human society only got here because we all agreed that killing in general is bad. But you know what? I don't want to be a dick. Let me just grant a point. Okay, so there's a point.
Thank
so
you.
We're at 1 out of 6. Thou shalt not commit adultery.
Adultery is like sex out of wedlock, right? And I believe that it was influenced. Yeah, go ahead.
It depends. It's not just sex out of wedlock. It can also be viewed as sexual perversion.
Okay. So, I mean, in the context of the society that it was written, having usually, and I'm just going to take, sex out of wedlock, because that would, usually lead to having like kids without fathers. So like an incomplete family, which in those times is like really bad. It's still, really bad, both like economically for the single mother and for the society, because, if tons of people who don't have complete families don't end up all too good.
That sounds like a big patriarchy problem, really. We live in a system that lets men, fathers get away with that kind of thing. But there's more to it. I think that, putting something in your pooper because it feels good is definitely off the books because of that commandment. Or how about just same-sex attraction?
So the first part you said you give to Christianity, or still not sure?
The thou shalt not kill. I'll say
no.
Sure.
The thou shalt not commit adultery when it refers to sex out of wedlock.
Sex out of wedlock. No. I absolutely disagree. I think that there are people who are wonderful for each other in every way, but are entirely sexually incompatible. I want someone who has sex the way I want to have sex. I think that is very important, just as important as, like, I want to live with someone because I don't want to marry them and then move in and find out that they're a slob. Like, if it turns out that their personal grooming habits are gross, then I would love to know that earlier than later. I think that being sexually compatible is really, really important in maintaining a happy relationship holistically. So
okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, I say then you're right.
Yeah.
Especially in modern with like different birth control things that we have.
Then I think that the adultery piece as sex out of wedlock, I think is a 0.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and plus, I really don't want to make like laws about what people do with their genitals, as long as everyone's consenting. You know what I mean? Like, it feels weird that I would, want to point out, that you did something, with your no-no parts and somebody else's no-no parts, and it's none of my business. But damn it, you broke the law. Like, it's weird.
I see what you're saying, and I generally agree. But I think there's like still like 90% I agree. But sometimes like there's a moment in society when it's important to regulate that, when the health of the society of the country, comes into question. Like South Korea, for example, they have like a really low birth rate, and of course it's the fault of the patriarchy there. But something still needs to be done with that.
And you can look at the 4B movement in South Korea.
Yeah,
I think,
100%.
But I think it's justified. I fully support the women of the 4B movement.
Yeah, I mean, me too, theoretically. But
so
when you think about like,
yeah, and I do want to be, again, Max, I want to be as charitable as I can be. There's another version of this commandment that is, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife.
Yeah.
That's kind of a thought crime. Don't push your neighbor into an affair. But if you think your neighbor's hot, like, what are you going to do? It's a thought crime. I think it's weird.
I agree with you that it is maybe like a thought crime, but I think that it's still important to have this sort of commandment against it, because thoughts, like the saying goes, like thoughts become actions, become habits, become whatever, that sort of like self-help thing. And it's like, if you have like a thought, if you entertain a thought for long enough, which is, I think, how a lot of people, incidentally also fall into like this white supremacist thing, is like they think about it all the time, and then at some point they're like, okay, like I hear it all the time, maybe it's true, maybe she is hot, maybe I should, go out and do something, try to covet her, right?
Well, coveting just means you have attraction in your head. I feel like breaking up a marriage is a lot more than coveting.
Yeah, I mean, like actually doing actions, and I feel like thoughts lead to actions, which lead to habits, which affects the society, the destiny of the country.
I don't know. I've definitely have you ever been to the Grand Canyon or just up somewhere high and you have that thought, man, what if I just jumped?
Yeah, actually, I did, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not even necessarily a depression thing. It's this intrusive thought. I think that we all have thoughts, we recognize them, and then we contextualize them and go, I want to live, therefore I'm not going to do that. I want to not be an absolute dick and break up a marriage, so I'm not going to introduce infidelity into their marriage. There's responsibility there. I think that the thought crime is weird. But I agree with you that being an asshole is a bad thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to get mad at you I'm not going to get mad at you for having a bad thought. I'm going to get mad at you for doing a bad thing. The coveting, I don't care about.
Yeah, but in my view, bad thoughts lead to bad things. How I became a deist from an atheist is that I was, when I was like in my teens, I went through all these, like Pascal's wager, through this, through other arguments, and like what created the universe, right? The prime mover, and it didn't seem to me like at all appealing, at all, logical, right?
Right.
But then I was constantly listening to it, and over time, I became more and more convinced, doubtful how solid my atheist beliefs were.
I totally understand that, and thinking and reasoning through and all of that are wonderful, and I love that. And I would call none of that coveting.
Okay.
So okay, we're at let's see, 7, and I think we got a 1 that I agreed on. And I think most of them, not all of them, most of them you agreed with me. So let's go to number 8. Thou shalt not steal.
Yeah, I think that it's a bad thing to steal others' property.
Okay. Did you ever read Les Mis or watch the musical?
The what?
Les Mis.
Lame what?
It's a book by a French author that takes place.
Oh, Les Miserables?
Yeah. During the French Revolution.
I watched the movie. Yeah.
Okay. So do you know why Jean Valjean went to prison?
Yeah, for stealing bread for his dying.
Yeah, his family was starving to death.
Yeah.
Okay. He stole though.
Yeah.
I think that he absolutely should have. I think that if you're starving to death, stealing food is morally the right thing to do.
Yeah, but it's a case of exception.
But we're talking about
case of exception.
We're talking about commandments, though. Like if we're talking about exceptions, if we're talking about side and edge cases, then I don't think they should be commandments.
I mean, I think it's like similar to murder. No one is saying it in the sense like you stealing bread to feed your dying, wife. It's in the sense of you breaking into someone's house to take their stuff to then sell, so you can buy something for yourself that
I mean, that
unless
is,
you're like a pauper on the street with nothing, you shouldn't steal.
I think that's a very, very small portion of stealing that you're bringing up, because that is just, honestly, that I think that is an internalized classism that is really kind of rooted in rooted against poor people. But rich people steal too.
Yeah,
They do it all the time. And what about people who steal based on ideological reasons, right? Napster, all the file sharing sites, sharing music, sharing art, things like that. Or how about technology? If let's say, I don't know, let's say Italy next year comes out with the cure for cancer. Should we wait for them to give it to everybody else, or should we take it and use it everywhere we can, regardless of what they think?
I think you have to look at the consequences. Yeah, I think in that case, probably not.
Yeah, you steal the shit out of it.
No, I mean, you wouldn't, because then if other people invent something, like basically they would be deterred from inventing stuff, or, in cases of like music theft or game piracy, there would be... I
hear what you're saying, and also not everyone is motivated by capitalism. You know that the first oh, help me, it was
penicillin?
Yes, penicillin. Max, you knew exactly what I was thinking. Penicillin. Did you know that penicillin was never patented?
Yeah, I knew that. And it's a terrible thing that it's being sold for money to people who need it.
But why was it never patented?
Because the guy wanted to benefit society.
That's right. I think that if somebody invented the cure for cancer, it should benefit society. I think that there's no amount of their feelings that is going to make it okay for people to unjustly die. Steal it. If you're starving, steal food. And if it is like, I don't think that people's being in their feelings about, stuff should justify others' suffering. And I think that is enough for me to say that thou shalt not steal is not a good, hard and fast rule. It is not a commandment. We can talk about theft, and we can talk about when it is and isn't justified, but I don't think it qualifies or should qualify as a commandment.
Okay, I see what you mean. So basically, you're saying that it's not good. Christianity is not a good basis for a moral system because it's not absolute.
Well, I mean, when we're talking about 10 commandments, those are the ones that are brought up as absolutes. Those are the ones that you brought up. So we're at 8 out of 10 so far. Well, let's finish this. 9 out of 10. Thou shalt not bear false witness.
Yeah, you shouldn't testify against someone when that's not the case.
So if you were, I don't know, hiding Jews in your basement from the Gestapo, and they knocked on your door and asked you if you were hiding people, if you followed the 9th commandment, you should look at them and say yes. Right?
No, because that's a lie. I feel like bearing false witness is like in a court of law. You say, John stole from me, or Eric, like someone accuses someone else of stealing, and you're like saying, yeah, I saw that, when in reality, that didn't happen.
I think that is just because of like us using old language, but just bearing false witness is lying.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I would give it to you, but one could make an argument about like Kantian ethics and how you should lie ever.
Yeah, and I disagree with Kant on that. I think that's ridiculous. That there are lots of great times when lying is the right thing to do and the best thing to do. I've said this on the air before, that I've told V, my partner, that if I'm on my deathbed and you've been having an affair, lie to me. I don't need you to tell me that. You know, that's not the time for that, right? So bearing
100%.
So 9 out of 10, we're looking real bad. The very last one, thou shalt not covet, period.
Shalt not what?
Thou shalt not covet. It goes back to the neighbor's wife thing.
Covet, just in general?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
There are other versions, like thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. What else do we got? Thou shalt not covet.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
I think, it's a good, like, psychologically, if you're jealous or envious, one of those two, of someone else's stuff, it's not good for your mental health. It's not good for your success in life.
I can agree on that to a degree, to a piece. So let me rephrase that. I can agree with that to a point. That's what I meant to say. I'm sure you can see where I would reasonably go with this, though, right?
Yeah, if you want, like, to be a great doctor, you probably should do it.
Yeah, you should. You should want to be the best. I don't want a doctor who's like, I want a doctor that is like, no, I'm the freaking best, and I'm going to do everything I can to be the better than everybody else. Like, I think that there's a case to be made. So we went through all 10 commandments. You called in originally because you wanted to talk about why religion is good, in terms of just as a moral system for society. And your example was the 10 commandments. We went through all 10, and maybe we got 2.
Yeah. Well, see, my view is that, and you're right that when you closely scrutinize, it doesn't work at all. But what I'm trying to say is that as a general guide for, like, an average person, I think it's good enough system that would promote, like, general prosperity. Obviously not in every case you shouldn't covet. No. Not in every case you shouldn't lie. But in general, for, like, like, as you say, someone stealing stuff to feed themselves, that's like a state of exception, right? That's not like the general thing. And, you yourself said that you disagree with Kantian ethics. And I don't believe that 10 commandments should be interpreted in the same sense.
I think that, people talk about, the trap, right? The trap of living in poverty. I think a lot of people who steal because they view themselves as in a situation where they are helpless, that they're trying to make their way along however they can with whatever skills that they have. I think that theft would be a lot less of a problem if people's basic needs were taken care of. I'm not saying it would go away, but I'm saying a big piece of it would go away.
Yeah, I agree.
And so that said, I don't know, Max. I think that as far as a moral system is concerned, the Bible gives really, really bad advice. It gives bad advice in the text of the 10 Commandments. It gives bad advice in the text of the book of Leviticus, right? All of the Mosaic laws that were passed down from God to Moses.
Right, but wasn't that canceled by Jesus?
No, it wasn't. Jesus said, "I will not change one." What's the phrase he uses? Not one ladder shall pass from the law. He also says, "Not one dot or tittle," something like that. I forget.
I'm not sure. I did not really read the Bible.
No worries. So the whole idea that Jesus came to fulfill the law is a really, really weird thing to say, because that like, oh, hey, we passed a law. You should not speed on the freeway. Okay, cool. Max, I got pulled over for speeding. That cop has fulfilled the law. Now everyone can speed, right? That's weird.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Saying that Jesus did away with the Mosaic commandments, you can definitely make that argument theologically. I just don't think that the fulfillment phrasing makes any real sense. But granting that, so I think that if that's the case, then let's just get rid of the Mosaic laws from the Bible. Let's not confuse people. That too many people point to that and say that we should still do that. We should just get rid of it, right?
Yeah. I think, the state really should gather, the best sociologists and just rewrite it every couple of decades, every couple of centuries.
I agree. And
because
I think
at the end of the day, it's a human written thing. It's a tool to, I believe its objective is to promote general welfare.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's,
times change. Sometimes it needs to change as well.
Well, absolutely. The book that you're talking about was written in the Bronze Age. We definitely need to update, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But that point alone tells me that the argument that you called in about that Christianity, in particular, you said Catholicism, is better for society on a pragmatic standpoint. I think it's not.
Yeah.
And I feel like I feel like we really plumbed the depths on this one in this call. What do you think?
I think I'll call at another time with a more developed position, because the continuous revelation and all this stuff. I know it's not in Christianity, but I just feel it's like a good tool for the weak-minded to follow.
And we've talked about that before. I think that's a condescending, and I don't like it. But I really appreciate you engaging with me honestly and talking with me about it. I think that we really did kind of go through that whole morality of Christianity thing and potentially being superior or not. And I really appreciate your call.
Yeah, thank you. I'll reassess my views.
Sounds good. Take care, brother.
Bye.
If only all conversations could be that way. I will take 10 maxes every time. 10 out of 10. I love that. All right, but that was a really long call. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with me. I do have another call on the line. Let's move on and talk to Sean in Massachusetts. Sean has been waiting for over an hour. Thank you for waiting. Sean, how are you doing?
Hi, Eric. How are you doing? Long time listener, first time ever calling.
Yay. Well, thank you for calling in. What do you want to talk about?
Did you ever watch the TV show The Good Place?
Oh, absolutely.
I wanted to get your thoughts on it because I was listening to you talk on heuristics, and it's just something kind of made me think of that show again. It's one of my favorite shows to put on. It talks about, it kind of got me introduced into reading about philosophy and other ideas that you just don't encounter anymore.
No, but like Chidi,
I didn't go to college for that. So.
I'm sorry. So one of the things, Sean, is there's a bit of a delay. So as long as we're both kind of patient with each other, I'm totally good. Sometimes we're going to talk over each other, but it doesn't mean, I'll never take it as you wanting to talk over me, but just as a delay thing. But I was just agreeing with you that Chidi from The Good Place, oh my gosh, what a great entry point into philosophy, right?
I agree. I kind of watched the show and it got to at least to look a little bit into Kantian physics. I love how they deal with the trolley problem and other concepts and what is good, and is good actually the idea of heaven, I don't believe it exists, but it's a place of constant orgasm, and everyone there was basically stupor and joy that was kind of pointless. There's just a lot of interesting ways in how they look at what evil is, what good is, what is values, and just a thing to think about. I was just curious on your thoughts on it. It's not a long topic. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I kind of want to answer the first thing that you said, even though it's not particularly Good Place centric, and that is that I think that if a heaven did exist, if we were wrong, if there was a God and there was a heaven and all of that, if we lived in that universe, I think that we would need to be brain wiped in order to enjoy heaven. I would not be able to enjoy eternal paradise if I knew that other people were suffering. Mm-hmm. And I would not be able to worship a God and call that God good if I knew that that God was able to fix the problems and the suffering and chooses not to for whatever reason. It doesn't matter what the reason is to me. So I would need to be turned into I would need to be lobotomized. which is definitely a conversation that I've had with Christians before. People, I've said, would you still be you in heaven? And if you were still you in heaven, what would you be able to, how would you be okay with knowing that there are others suffering in hell? So that, but going back to the good place, my thoughts on it are that, I definitely feel like it is a great entry point. Like the literal interpretation of the trolley problem, making Chidi stand at the trolley while the trolley hit people was amazing. I think that relying on and using different people as examples of kind of shitty ways to live your life were really, really fun. I think Tahani had no idea why she would be in the bad place, but we all sit back and go, oh, yeah, you're right. That's really kind of shitty. That you don't just need to, like, it's not just about being an asshole directly, but about, I don't know. I really liked it. For people who haven't seen The Good Place, I think it's a really, really fun show. Yeah. I don't know. Was there anything in particular that like happened that you wanted to ask about or talk about, or was it just kind of in general?
Just in general, because I kind of, when watching the show, you can kind of see a little bit of yourself in all the four characters a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of gives you an idea just to reflect on your own morality and what you do, how good or how bad it is in a non-theological perspective, honestly. And Chidi, with his trying to be good in a world that's almost impossible to be really, how overly focusing on his own ethics kind of paralyzed him, which was his
big sin.
His big fault was he couldn't do anything because he couldn't ever make up his mind on anything because he was so concerned about everything. He did nothing. And
so what's funny about that is I think that is a perfect example of, at the top of this episode, I was talking about presupposition, right? And about heuristics and us kind of having these mental shortcuts so that we don't need to think things all the way through. And I know that there are a lot of atheists who go, oh, well, I only use facts and logic for the decisions that I make in all these different parts of my life. And it's like, no, you don't. You have shortcuts in your head. And what's important isn't that you got rid of, it's just that you have the tools to be able to deconstruct when you need to. And I think Chidi is a great example because I feel like what a lot of, skeptics pretend that they're Chidi. But when you actually see what it's like to be Chidi, you don't want to be that.
I just don't have it in me to be even close to that well thought. I'm like,
yeah,
I can see.
Well, and what a wonderful practice and empathy to recognize that you do it too. And so let's not do the holier than thou thing, because I feel like a lot of atheists do act holier than thou when it comes to that. I use facts and logic. You do in this one circumstance, but have you thought about, other things? How has that influenced your politics? How has that influenced your relationships romantically or with your family? How has that influenced the way you look at work? How has that influenced the way you look at money? How's that, you know what I mean? Like all of that stuff needs to be addressed. And I feel like Chidi does. Yeah, go ahead.
As a funny note, I'm a biochemist, so I work in a lab, and I swear, we're all scientists. We all know better. We're all like, I got a bad feeling about this instrument today. And it's like, intellectually, I know it doesn't matter what my feeling is. The thing's going to work whether or not it's whatever happens. But the fact that we all talk about that on things that we should know better, but it's still part of our conversations, it's just hilarious to think about because, like, yes, we know this isn't true, but we also, I don't know if that is in all professions. Like I'm a scientist, so I know scientific method. I believe in it, but there's also times I'm like, I know this is going to fail. This thing was a little wobbly. I feel this was not perfect here, so it's definitely going to fail. It didn't fail, but it's just a superstition.
Yeah,
almost it's like the more scientific you get, sometimes I feel superstition just kind of, not superstition, but that feeling or something like that just kind of grabs you harder.
And let's not discount superstition, because superstition is absolutely there. I think if anything, it reminds us that we're still apes. And there's something about that makes me feel a little bit less like a fraud, you know? The fact that I can recognize that we are all just walking apes, that we still have, you know, the same kind of built-in, you know, superstitious, leanings that pigeons have. I don't know. For me, it's kind of grounding, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, I don't know. Don't discount it. Embrace it. You know, that we're not these perfect almighty beings. In fact, we are way past where our biology has prepared us to be. And we're doing the best we can, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, superstition. Heck, I wear this jacket when I'm not feeling secure. And I wore this jacket when I started doing Talk Heathen. And I've worn this jacket, and I've one exactly like it. You know, I've got two of them. To conferences and things like that. It makes me feel good about myself. It makes me feel like I'm, you know, Eric Murphy, this you know, YouTube content creator. Same with this shirt. But there's nothing about the jacket that makes me that. It's just the feeling that I get. You know, it's this kind of lizard brain response to, yeah, I had a good experience, so now I have a lucky pair of socks kind of thing. You know, I don't know.
Well,
Go ahead.
I do want to call in. And I never understood why people call lizard brain response, but that'll be another call some other time. Because I know you're almost at 2 hours, and that.
Yeah, I. So, in a nutshell, I can say that I have a very, very limited lay understanding, and because of that, I highly recommend you talk to people who are more qualified than me. But from what I understand, there are different parts of your brain that operate different things, and there are higher level kind of metacognitive things, and there are things like your breathing and your heart rate, the release of chemicals into your body, right? All your different hormones.
Yeah.
Those are things you don't control. And there's also this kind of semi-brain that exists in your spinal column. That knee-jerk reactions, right? You know, it doesn't need to get all the way to your brain for a pain signal to cause your hand to pull away from the source of pain. And I think that there are, you know, things that we do that feel like they're more instinctual, I guess. And that's what I mean by lizard brain. That
I know.
Go ahead.
I know what you're saying, because I actually understand a lot of the biology, but I never understood why we pointed to lizards, because they're really not in our evolutionary path. Wouldn't it be our ape brain, or even if we go further back, maybe a
mammalian?
How does a mammalian brain?
Yeah.
How does it get to lizard? Because that's a very different evolutionary path.
I don't know.
That's the part that always gets to me, and people always afraid of the lizard people. I'm like, why are you afraid of the lizard people? Aren't you afraid of more of the cat people? 'Cause they secretly run the world anyhow. You live in your cat's house.
This is true. That is a funny observation.
Sorry,
I don't know. No, that's okay. I wonder if there's a historical reason for that. Maybe people in the comments can let us know. But as far as, you know, your call topic, The Good Place, definitely a great show for anybody who hasn't seen it. It's totally worth a watch.
All righty. I'll let you go. Thank you very much. And I do appreciate you doing these shows. I've been watching these since back when you were doing not the Atheist, but the Talk Heathen back in those days. So
yeah,
I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for doing them. Have a wonderful day, and enjoy. Hopefully your weather is nicer than mine.
I'm the wrong person to ask, because I love cold and rainy. But and it is that, so I'm loving it. But Sean, thank you for calling. Thank you for following for so long. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too. That does make me want to hop into the after show. Because I love hanging out and on Discord and just chatting with people, getting the chance to have a little bit more relaxed conversation. If you want to join in the after show, the link to the Discord is in the description for this video. And it is also linked in the live chat. So if you want to hop on Discord and come say hi and hang out for a bit, I'd be absolutely happy to do that. And as always, the live show actually starts 90 minutes after the show begins, which means the after show has been started for 20 minutes. I'm late, but I would love to go there. I do want to read the super chats like I do as always. I want to say hello and thank you so much for those people who are on Twitch, who are hanging out. Hey, thank you for joining us. For the people who are watching on YouTube, I want to say thank you. Sean Isherwood sent 2 super chats. Thank you. First message, I saw last week that you're reading Conceptual Mathematics. Yeah. It has TOPOI in. Also, do all the exercises. It's going to take me time, so please be patient. And then you said, when I told you about EFF last week, I was not talking about indeterminacy. Rather, I was talking about the interpretation of true in that topos. That is above my head, at least at this point. So I apologize. I definitely have more growing to do mathematically in order to really engage with that meaningfully. My unfinished journey. Thank you so much for the super chat. It says, hail Nero, hail Eric, and hail responsibility. Cheers to that. I feel like this episode turned out really, really well. I loved the conversations. So for those who called in, thank you so much for calling. For everyone who is working as a moderator, call screening in the live chat, in the Discord, thank you. There's no way I could do this without you. And of course, if you like the show and you want to support it, I could definitely use it because, I want to do this, continue to do this full time. So if you'd like the show, you want to see it continued, consider going to patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration, where you can get ad-free versions of the podcast and this live show, as well as I'm looking at revamping it actually and adding more things. So stay tuned for that. But I think it's time to head to the after show. So thank you for hanging out. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Make sure you set your clocks forward because, like I said, daylight savings was last night. But aside from that, I'm Eric Murphy, and I'm glad we had this talk.